In an earlier video, we took a look at how to use Autocrat to create student certificates by using a template created in Google Slides and merging information from a Google Sheet. So let's use that same Autocrat add-on to create a student or parent-friendly report that can easily display data collected through a form. So to show how to create these type of reports, I'm going to use a Google form as an example that is modeled after a Google form that many of our early childhood buildings use. And for this Google form, teachers will, throughout the year, complete this form based on an assessment that they do on individual students. The responses for this form can be viewed by hitting the Response tab, and then you can print individual reports, but they end up being very lengthy with a lot of white space. And for this particular form, there's information in that Google form that doesn't necessarily need to appear in this report. So it doesn't necessarily look very parent friendly. So using the Autocrat add-on in Google Sheets, we can create a much friendlier version to report this information from the Google form. And it's important to remember that when looking at the responses in a Google form, you can always automatically look at all of the responses in a Google Sheet by going to this icon right here. So I'm going to click on that, which will take us to this Google Sheet that has populated all of the information collected for that Google form. I have already created a template to pull this information into. So on my template, I've created a title. I want to report the student name, last name, first name. I want to be able to have the teacher's name, and I'm only going to report the literacy information that's gathered on this particular form. This form also collects information about number sense, but for this particular report, I'm only going to report the progress on literacy. So in my template, I pulled information on letter recognition, letter sound recognition, name writing, and language observations. And you'll remember from the previous video that in order to pull information from a particular column in a Google form, we have to create tags in our template by using the greater than and less than symbols with the heading or the column title in between those tags. So if you look at my template, I have last name and first name, but my data has been collected where I have student names together. So what I actually need to do now that I've collected all of my information is split this column into first name and last name. So in order to do that, I'm going to highlight the column and I'm going to insert a column to the right where the split information will go into. I'll highlight column B, and then I'm going to go into Data, Split Text to Columns. This is going to ask me how it's going to detect the separation of the words that are in that column. We're going to separate it by the space between the first name and the last name. And then you can see I've got the student's first name in one column and the student's last name in another column, but I need to change my column headings. So I'm going to change this to first name. I'm going to change this one to second name, or to last name. I'm going to change this one to last name. Now, everything else in my template looks good. I've got it in parent-friendly language because I want to be able to say, this student does this, and make it very readable for the parents. So I'll go into my Google Sheet, go to add-ons in order to access Autocrat. I'm going to go ahead and open. I'm going to create a new job. First step is to title my job. So I'm going to title this Fourth Quarter Literacy Report. Click Next. Then I need to go into my Google Drive to find my template in order to pull the information from this Google Sheet into that template. So I'm going to click on Drive. It's going to pull up my Google Drive where I can search for that template, which I've called it Early Literacy End of the Year Report. Here it is. Click Select. And then I can see right here that it's pulling the correct template to combine with the information in this Google Sheet. I'll go ahead and click Next. And then step 3 is where I go through to make sure all of the tags that I have in my report are correctly pulling from the data in the correct column. Teacher comments, and then I have this little icon right here lets me know that language observations isn't mapped to any column, so it's not going to pull any data where that tag is. So then I can go through and search the column headings to figure out which one is the one that should be tagged to that. It's this one right here. Then I'm going to click Next. File settings is where I create the name of each of the files that are going to be created. These files automatically are saved into my Google Drive, so I want to make sure that I can easily find the files that I'm looking for. And I can choose for them to be created individually or as one particular file, and I can choose for them to be Google Docs or PDFs. I'm going to keep them as Google Docs. And this time, because I want them to be individual files, I want them to be named by the student's last name. So I'm going to create the tag, last name, and then literacy report, end of year. So every file that's created for my students will be their last name and then this information right here. I'm going to go ahead and click Next. And this is where I decide what folder I want these particular reports to be put into. And then I'm going to go ahead and click Next. If I realize that I'd like to have a different folder for these to dump into, I can go into my drive and create the folder and then go back to this step here. I don't have a dynamic folder reference. I don't have any merge conditions. I'm not sharing this with anyone. I am not going to set it to trigger when this should be done. So I'm going to go ahead and click Save. It's pulled them all together, so I can go ahead and run the job by clicking the first button. And it takes a couple seconds, but eventually all of my different files will be created. This step takes a while for all of the forms to be run, but once they're finally run, at the end of my spreadsheet, I can see the link for each of these individual reports, or I can go into the drive where the folder is and see each of those as well. But if I want to see this particular student's report, I click on the link, and I can see Ava Staples' report that Ava can name 17 to 20 uppercase letters. The unknown letters that she has are here. Ava names 11 to 17 lower letters. Her unknown letters are here. I can see the information on sound recognition, name writing, and then here's the list of language observations that were marked on the form by her teacher. So this is a much printer-friendly and a report that uses much less paper to convey the information to the parents.